All right, Garrett. Welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast, brother. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, man, I'm doing awesome. It's been a good day. Most of my listeners hopefully know I moved to Texas. I'm in Colorado right now, and it snowed like a foot. So I got to get out in the snow a little bit and play with my kids. So good start to the day. Getting even better now that you're here on the podcast with me. I want to say, thank you for jumping on. I think it was fortuitous because I know you were thinking I need to get back on some other people's podcasts, and I instantly randomly reached out, man. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. I haven't uploaded here as of late, and I'm like, my wife's like, are you still doing the podcast? I'm like, yeah. And then my buddy's like, hey, I got guys asking me why you're not uploading. I'm like, well, one, I'm kind of a lazy piece of shit right now and I don't really want to. And then I've got a bunch of other great excuses I can add on top of that. But I'm like, it is time for me to start hitting it again and maybe try just getting some different topics out there. But yeah, no, it's nice to be able to start recording some podcasts, new podcasts that I haven't been on before. And I'm excited to just tell stories and not have to be an expert in anything. So
that's the key.
Yeah.
What I'll say, man, as a new podcaster, and goes to the listeners, it's a lot of work to do this, like more than I expected. I'm gonna talk with some cool people and throw it up on the internet and people will think it's great. It's more than that. And so, I respect all of you guys that have been doing it for a long time. And let's do this. Let's have you go ahead and introduce yourself because maybe not everyone listening knows who Garrett Weaver is. So
yeah, hopefully they don't. Yeah, hopefully most people haven't heard of me on here. I am Garrett Weaver. I'm from Oregon, on the Coast Range side. I'm from Roseburg, Oregon. Grown up here my whole life, lived here my whole life, married my wife who did the same, grew up here and lived here her whole life. And we've got a great state to hunt in. Fortunately, the politics suck here, so the hunting's not great, but we have a lot of diversity of animals here that we can choose from. So I've got, I don't know if you know Oregon. You probably know Oregon fairly well, living in Washington there for a while, but
enough.
Yeah. So, we've got Coues deer, blacktail, mule deer, regular whitetails, Rocky, and Rosie, tons of other different animals. I want to go into them all, but tons of other different animals that we can chase here. So we are pretty spoiled. The opportunities aren't great, but you can get out and hunt every year and have fun. Like we were talking earlier, you may not kill something, but you might get drunk along the way. So who knows? But it's fun. Gosh, about on point, I guess I can go into that is I started bow hunting on my own, got into it. My dad bow hunted long time ago, like before I was born. He was into bow hunting and had some success, had a lot of failures, and then just quit because he lost an elk. And he's like, I hit it perfect. I know I did. And then he lost it. And he's like, I'm never bow hunting again. And so
the equipment.
yeah. And it's just like, man, so I had a fiberglass, I think, blue longbow growing up as a kid. And we go to like 3D shoots. And, it's just like, I was like 4. And that was like my earliest memory of shooting a bow. But I really, really got into it in high school because I just was in the woods all the time. That's what I do. I was going to be a hunting guide. I was going to hunt for a living. I was going to travel the world and just hunt. And that's what I was going to do, is be a hunting guide, traveling hunting guide, preferably. And so I was in the woods all the time. And, every time we hit the woods, actually about the summer after I graduated, I took 6 buddies up in the woods in 6 different trips. And I'd spent 4 to 5 days up in the woods, for about 5-6 months straight. I knew exactly what bucks were where, what there was to offer. If I would go down this little trail, they would pop out 400 yards that way in the edge of the unit. Like I knew exactly where to tell you to stand and everything. And we went 6 for 6 trips, 6 different bucks, 6 different buddies, it was just it was just automatic.
Yeah.
None of them were huge, but and then I'm like, this just isn't really that fun anymore, and so that's when I really made the switch into just bow hunting. Like I'm going to make it as hard as I can on myself, minus going with a trad bow, and just really dive into this thing. And then it kind of just struggled. It was a giant struggle. I killed a buck every year. But elk, my family wasn't very successful elk hunters. And, so I had to figure that out pretty much on my own. And then, a friend of my dad's kind of took me under his wing after I struggled for a couple of years, never drew my bow back, never had a bull come in. never got within even 100 yards of an elk. Which is kind of hard to do over here. I mean, you're bound to stumble into something over here if you hunt. I couldn't even do that. And then just stuck with it. Now it's just really taken off. And I help people through all those failures and experiences and learning curves. And I just really love being able to share that passion with people now. And that's kind of where On Point came from, is just all those little tips, tricks, and knowledge that I picked up from either myself learning the hard way or just picking guys that were way better than me. I'm blessed with some really good shooters here locally that I was able to learn how to shoot a bow the way you're supposed to. So I just kind of give that information out there for free, never charged a penny for any of it, and couldn't be happier with that.
That's awesome, man. And
probably more than what you're wanting, but
no, that's exactly what we're looking for. And I know that what you're doing is held in high regard. I've heard your podcast come up a bunch of times. I know I've listened to a few episodes. I was telling you, there's just so much content out there. It's hard to kind of, pick exactly what you're spending your time on, especially as you start doing podcasts, because every guest you have, you're like, oh, I got to take all their stuff. I got to throw it back at them. But man, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you coming on. So we know why we're here. We're here to hear some of your favorite stories. So let's just jump into it. Why don't you set the stage, man? Kind of tell us where, what, how, whatever you think is important to kind of get us there.
I would say that, last year's bull, which is on the wall over here, he's not a big bull, but it's the stupidest story I have. It's the second stupidest story. Number one for elk, it'd be number two all time. But, so I shot that bull, and the way that we shot him, I'll kind of get into that story. But last year was a phenomenal year in the elk woods. It's just every time we stepped out of the truck, I either got into elk, heard elk, had a response, just
that's awesome.
Made a stock on something. I've never had so many spot and stock opportunities until last year. I mean, I probably had within the first 9 days, I had 4 different stocks where I ended up pretty much in bow range, but something just didn't work. Or that maybe they fed off where it just wasn't comfortable taking the shot, getting out that 80, 90, 100 yard range. It's just like, fuck it. I can get a better opportunity later. And it just was just opportunities all the time. And the bugles didn't really come until later in the season, but there was just a lot of spot and stock opportunities. I was like, hell yeah. That's my bread and butter. I got really good at stalking blacktails just, as I was growing up. Right. And doing it with a rifle, pushing deer out of units. So I could tell what they were going to do, where they were going to go. And it basically, I guess, I got really good at stalking in units and stuff out here, just through stalking blacktail. And so stalking an elk's a lot easier than stalking a crackhead deer. And so I had some success, and I was able to stalk into a best stock I've ever made. I had no cover. I was on this cat road. There's the tallest tree is about knee high. I mean, it's freshly replanted, and these elk are just feeding out in the middle of the open. I mean, there's 2 giant slash piles on the edge of this unit and a road going right to where those slash piles do. And the 2 bulls are feeding along the edge of the timber towards those slash piles. And so I'm sneaking up this road. It's like a dirt clay road, not making a peep. Wind's perfect. I'm like, I'm going to smoke this 5-point this morning. This is awesome, And I had this little kind of a ridge to my left where the road's wrapping around this little ridge, and out comes this cow and a calf. I'm like, okay, this is definitely not good. They're 30 yards away, and the bulls are 140. I mean, they're pretty far away. And so I wait about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And they, they catch me moving a couple times. The calf does, but it doesn't really matter. It's a calf. And so she pops her head up, looks at me, and I'm like, I just sit there. And finally they feed off to where they're about 50 to 60 yards away to my right, which is where they needed to be. And they're not really paying attention. The cow's definitely not paying attention. The calf is just like, what the heck is this going on over here?
Yeah. And mom's not upset, so I shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes me half an hour to go about 100 yards because I'm walking every time their head's down feeding, and I'm not making any noise or anything, but I also have to keep an eye on the 2 bulls that are still in sight. So I've got 4 sets of eyes, no cover, and I managed to make it up to the edge. I'm like, if I can make it to the timber line, it's game over. I'm going to kill this bull. And it's a little 5-point, but I'm like stoked, you know. I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I would have brought my camera. And so I'm making the final like 30 or 40 yards. I can cover it pretty quick because now the bulls have wrapped around those giant slash piles, which if people don't know what slash piles, it's like basically chunks of logs that didn't make it into a load. Basically, it's just not good. And they can be the size of a camp trailer. I mean, they can be pretty freaking big. So
yeah,
I have a pretty big obstruction between me and the bulls. Might as well be a house. And you can just basically run from there. So I kept sneaking up, and then I find the bull 50 yards broadside. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
it came over.
Yeah, dude. I was like, oh no. I just sat there for about 30 seconds. I'm like, okay, just like breathing's good. Dial's good. Re-range. Okay. Grab the right arrow. You know, I've got everything's right. And okay, time to draw back, pull. I'm shooting a hinge. I get great shot execution with my hinge. And all right. And it just, as soon as that pin settles, the bow goes off. And I'm thinking, hell yeah, that's a dead bull. And then I watch that arrow go shoot right about 2 feet below the bull. I'm like, oh fuck. I was like, what just happened? Like, I'm looking at my sight tape. I rearranged the bull. He run like 5 yards to my left. And so now he's like still about 50 yards. And I'm like, I reload, I guess. So I do the same thing. Punk and shoot just barely under his armpit. I'm like, okay, now I'm mad because that's a shot I do not miss. Like I practice
twice,
a lot. I shoot a lot. I'm very confident. Cocky is taking shots you shouldn't. Confidence taking shots that you should. And I was very confident in those shots, man. Like I talk myself through the shots. I'm like, you know, as I'm drawing back, you're dead, dude. You're so fucked. Like, boom, like I'm going to kill you. And both of those shots, no, nothing. And the only thing I can think of is that on the second shot, he maybe kind of ran out and then back a little bit. So maybe I lost like 5 or 6 yards and just shot right under him or something. I don't know. But I know both those shots felt really good. I found both my arrows, plucked one out of a piece of firewood basically, and plucked the other one out of a stump. And then he's at 80 yards. And I'm like, you know, I just missed that bull twice, and 80 yards is definitely in my wheelhouse, but it'd be irresponsible for me to take that shot at this point because now I'm not confident. And it's just, you know, I need to go back to the truck and shoot my bow and just figure out what happened. Yeah. And so I did. I even took a video of it, and I take out an arrow, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, it's 50 yards. It shoots 2 feet low, slaps into the Reinhardt. I'm like, okay, set that arrow off to the side. Let's take the second arrow I shot. And I did. I put the broadhead was still good on it, so I kept everything. And I hit about 1/2 inch from center, like just great shot. I mean, 1/2 inch from center is pretty good at 50 yards. And I'm like, okay. So I went back to the first arrow. I'm like, something's going on with this arrow. And I'm like, you know what you did, Garrett, is you were practicing, right? You know, I shoot arrows, even if it's dark, I'll shoot arrows right in front of the truck just so I can get all the pops and creaks out of my shoulders and elbow and anything in the bow. And I don't want my motto is I don't want the first shot of that day to be on a live animal. I want the first shot to be something comfortable and just get anything out of the way, you know?
Yeah. Makes sense.
I've had a lot of failures in the years. I try to put everything in my favor. Right. So I figured out that I had replaced that arrow accidentally when I screwed a field tip on it, that I had replaced it with an arrow that wasn't shooting very good. And I'd stuck that one in my quiver. And that was magically the 1 out of 5 arrows I grabbed. I grabbed the one that shouldn't have been in there. And I'm like, okay, well, that was really smart. That was great. That was awesome idea, Garrett. So I think at this point now I'm going to have to basically just have a stack of practice arrows. Every arrow I've hunted with and verified shoot straight. It's going to stay in my fucking quiver. I'm not taking them out now. And so I'm pissed off. I'm driving off the mountain. I'm calling my hunting partner. I'm like, well, you're up, you know? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just missed a fucking bull, dude, at 50 yards. He's like, what? I was like, broadside out in the middle of a unit, you know, it was right here. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, how did you miss? I was like, long story, I fucked up, but I got it figured out. And he's like, you must have really fucked up. He's like, you don't do that. And I was like, I know, but no one's above making mistakes. I did. And I know there's a bull in here bugling because I was here last night and that wasn't him. And it wasn't his little buddy. And so there's got to be a third bull in here with 5 or 6 cows because I heard them calling the night before. I'm like, let's go find him. And I tell him right where I had him. I sent him the Onyx points. He's like, I know where that bull's going. And with Rosie's, you can kind of do that. Once you have them figured out, you can figure out right where they're going to go. And if they're not here, then they're definitely over here. And just doing your homework and being in the woods a lot, you can figure that out. And he had this herd pegged. Like, he's like, I know exactly. Well, we're going to go kill him tonight if he's talking. And so we go up, I meet him up on the mountain and I'm shooting my bow. He's shooting my bow. We're both shooting pretty good. And I've got my confidence back and I'm like, well, you're a shooter, man. I'll just leave my bow in the truck. And he's like, no. Bring your bow. He's like, but I do appreciate being shooter. He's like, I do. No one's ever done that for me before. So I was like, okay. So we make a 4-mile-ish hike. I don't know if it was 4 miles. It was pretty freaking far. Down this steep face where that bull went off that I was calling to the night prior and nothing. Wind's howling. I mean, even if a bull bugled, you probably wouldn't hear him. We covered this drainage, that drainage, this drainage. And then finally we get all the way down to his truck because we made one hunt from my truck down to his. And we're driving. And he's like, if he's not in this area, then he's farther up the drainage. So we go farther up. He takes this road, immediately fresh rub. I'm like, sweet. Like, this has to be him, dude.
Yeah.
And it looks like a pretty good rub. And so we park, get out of the truck, and I've got my bugle and bow, and he's got his bow. And immediately I start smelling elk. I'm like, okay, there's elk in here somewhere. The wind's blowing downhill. So obviously they're probably above us, or we're smelling somewhere where it took a piss or something. And we continue our hunt back towards where we had ended our last hunt. So we're just basically kind of just checkerboarding, sectioning off where it's not until we run into them, process of elimination kind of thing. And I get a couple more whiffs of elk. We head back to the truck. He's like, if we're getting he's funny. He's a really good elk hunter. So he's like, if the wind's coming downhill and we're smelling him, he's got to be right here. I was like, okay. He's like, there's a road that goes right there. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's go there. So we drive back around about a mile. We get up this other road. We're bebopping along, having just talking. And I pretty much given up on finding the elk at this point. We've got like an hour and a half until dark. And he comes around this corner. And the rub that we had seen about a quarter mile below us on this road, and there's a new unit. So we're on top of the unit now, and we're just getting it ready to drive into the timber patch where we think he could be. Come around a corner, and he's standing right there in the freaking road with his cows. And I'm just like, he's like, holy shit. And so he stops right on this like corner, and then it's like a 200-yard straight stretch. And it's about 20-year-old timber on both sides. So it's fairly thick, but you can shoot in it. And it's just the whole herd's just staring at us. We're like, fuck, dude. Like, I'm like, what are the chances of this, dude? And he's like, God damn it. He's like, they haven't spooked yet. I'm like, you're right. They haven't spooked yet, but the whole herd is looking at us. And there's a spike about 100 yards from us. And the rest of them are about 150 yards away from us. And so he's like, let's just sit here and shut the truck off. So it's your shot, dude. You make the calls, right? Your shot. Yeah. So he shuts the truck off. We're sitting there, and he rolls down his window. Bzzz, and then as soon as he does that, the bullhead ran back into the timber. And then as soon as he rolls down his window, it just cracks off. It sounds like it's just right outside the door the bull is. I'm like, holy shit. Like, that's the same bull from last night. He's not as big as I thought he'd be, but he's a rag 4x5, but he's got a great bugle on him. And so we're like, holy crap, that's definitely the bull. He had, I think we counted 4 or 5 cows. So I was pretty close to what the herd was. I didn't know there was a spike with them, but it was definitely the herd. And they were about 2 miles from where I had them the day prior. Like, they had gone pretty far up the drainage. And so we're just sitting there, and I'm like, what do you want to do? he's like, I don't know. I don't think we can stalk them. I mean, they're all watching us, kind of gone back to feeding. And I'm like, well, we can't call to them. And so we just sit here and wait for them to feed off into the timber, and then we'll kind of cut them off and make a play. And the bull at this time still bugling. He chases a cow back out onto the road, goes back into the timber. He's got one cow he's really interested in. I'm like, okay, let me get some footage real quick. So I take out my binoculars and I put my phone through my binos, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I put my elbow on the center console, and I lay my elbow down there to get like a steady shot through my phone. And I hit the fucking key fob and go, God. I'm like, God, no, like, this is how it ends. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, I look at him like, man. We had just talked about how he was going to be shooter again. And then within a minute, I'm honking the horn. I'm like, I am such an asshole. Like, he's never going to let this down. Like, and he looks at me and I'm like, did I do that? He's like, yeah, you did that. I'm like, fuck, I'm so sorry, dude. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I am legitimately sorry in the most legitimate, sincere way possible. I fucked up. And we're sitting there kind of like shaking our heads. The whole herd looks back up at us. The bull's still off in the timber chasing the cow. The spike's 80 yards from us at this time. He's feeding closer to the truck. And we give it a few minutes, and the herd goes back to feeding in the middle of the road. And I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to kill this bull now after driving up on the herd, having them seeing us, me honking at them, having them hear us and freak the hell out. Now they went back to feeding, and they start kind of just feeding off into the right side of the road through into the timber. And, and finally the bull chases the cow back over, because the cow goes back up to the herd, and the bull follows her right across the road. He's like, you should probably be shooter. You found this bull. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it's not big enough. And plus you did find it. And I was like, yeah, but I already missed one. So we had like a couple minute debate about who's going to shoot this bull. And I'm like, listen, if you want me to shoot this bull, I'm going to shoot this bull. I will do it. And we can't play this game. So he's like, you're going to shoot this bull. I don't want it. I'm like, okay, so you're officially giving it the pass. Yes. Okay. So I grab my bow. I'm shooter again. All right. And we get out, and he's like, well, now that you're a shooter, he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, fuck, dude, I don't know. The spike is still standing there looking at us. And I'm like, okay. He's like, well, we can either wait for him to feed off or just bail out your side of the truck, and we'll sneak around, use the truck as cover, get into the timber and join the herd and try and call that bull in there, because he's fired up. And and I'm like, or we could spook the spike off on purpose and just bomb at that bull. Just fucking go at him, dude. Just 100% just bomb at him. And I'm like, because the spike doesn't matter. He only matters if he spooks towards the bull and tips off the herd and spooks the herd. Like, that's the only, if he goes to the left, we're good. It doesn't matter. He might as well be a crow at that point. It doesn't matter. So I'm like, let's get on the road with him. And then we'll try and like just shoosh him over to the left side of the road. And if he does that, then we have a full 100% just bomb in and kill that bull. Okay. So we both get out. We're just walking down the middle of the road at this point. The spike's just standing there looking at us. I mean, we're within 80 yards for sure. And and he just like, just kind of walks off to the left side of the road. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, yes. And so I look at Brown. I'm like, dude, that just worked. And so I'm like, well, now let's get on the right side of the road, and we'll kind of just sneak up the timber, and we can still hear everything going on up there. He's still there. And then so we get to where we're about right in the middle of the road, and that bull heard that spike run off. Well, he comes back out of the timber to see, hey, where'd you go? And he pegs me and Brad right in the middle of the road. I mean, I was like, I'm like, okay, this is how it ends. Okay. Oh, I'm fine with that. We got farther than we should have. And Brad's like, we're sitting there, and we finally I don't know, midget like step into we're basically grabbing our knees and just like hobbling over into the ditch, trying to stay as low as possible. And there's ferns growing up, so we have a little bit of cover. But the bull watches this guy kind of shoosh over in the ditch, and we sit there for a few minutes. And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Just enjoy the view at this point. There's nothing we can do. We're fucked." And At one point, I don't know whether he ninja rolled or he lunged or dove or sprinted, but I saw this roll. It was Brad was wearing a black sweatshirt. I see this blur of black. Just I go, fuck it. He just dives into the brush or ninja rolls into the brush. And he just starts going batshit crazy, bugling, breaking ranches, raking, just cow calling, everything. It sounded like there's 100 elk in one 10-foot square. And I just start laughing. I was like, there's no fucking way that's going to work. But I appreciate the effort. And I'm just watching the bull, and you can just see the bull kind of go like his head tilt, and then it tilts back the other way like a dog, like when you're talking to a dog. It's just kind of doing like this head tilt thing. Like, what in the hell was that? Maybe it was an elk. And he starts walking towards me. I'm like, no way is this happening right now. He's about 120 yards away. And now he's about 100. And now I'm like ranging things. I'm like, well, if he makes it to that tree, that's about 65 yards, somewhere in there. And he stops. And Brad looks over at me. At this time, he quit bugling and stuff. He's just like looking at me like, I'm like, keep going. Whatever you're doing's working, dude. Like, don't stop. And the bull hangs up and just listens. And he's just like, now he's like just listening, kind of licking his lips a little bit, trying to get a win. Nothing. No, there's no win to be had. We're lucky in that point. And basically, the bull's kind of just starting to get bored with it, I think. And I look over at Brad. I'm like, Brad, go about 10 more yards into the timber and push on this bull really fucking hard. Like, go get into his cows. Just fucking run. And so Brad just goes up there ways, just crashing like a bull, pissed off, and just starts raking, doing the same thing. But he pushed right up into that bull almost. Well, that bull didn't like that. And he immediately, there's a little cedar, just pecker pole growing right off the side of the bank of the ditch, but he's about, 40 yards from it. So he walks up to that cedar tree, starts raking the shit out of it, still standing on the road. And he's got to be within 15, 20 yards of Brad. Like, they're right next to each other. Yeah. Brad almost got in between him and his cows. So the bull didn't like that. He starts getting real territorial, and I'm ranging. I'm like, that's in range. I'm like, that's like 67 yards, I think. I'm like, I can shoot that. And so he's still quartered to. I'm like, I don't like that. So I'm like, the bull's going to have to really get into this tree and turn broadside. And about that time he does. Give him one last range, draw back. I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. I'm just thinking, okay, that's it. Boom, bow goes off perfectly. Felt great. Here to smack the bull. And then the bull churns and whirls and goes off. And then within 10 seconds stops. And I'm thinking, if that arrow went where that pin was, that bull's smoked, like absolutely done. And then about a minute goes by, and I hear a crash, and it's about 60, 70 yards off the road. I'm like, I think I just killed that bull. I'm pretty sure that bull's dead, and he's right there. And when I heard that crash, I yelled to Brett. I'm like, down goes Frazier, like, like, he's like, did you shoot that bull? I'm like, dude, I just killed that bull. And he's like, there's no way. I'm like, that will never happen again. Like, it's all on Instagram. I'm like, we're just laughing, walking back to the truck. And I'm like, we got to call somebody and tell somebody what just happened. So we called our buddy James, and he's playing poker, drinking beer with my cousin. And he's like, well, fuck that. I want to come help pack. I'm like, well, it's not be much of a pack, dude. It's flat ground within 70 yards of the road. I'm like, you can come up and have a beer with us up here. How about that? Bring a kill bottle with you. And he does. He brings a couple, I don't know, probably hams or something. I forget what they were. And that bull died right where I heard him. And I hit him a little, about 2-3 ribs farther back than what I wanted. He was ever so slightly quartered to me, but I hit him right here. I definitely got, if I didn't get both lungs, I'd be shocked. I didn't take everything out. And then it came out in the guts. So either the arrow kind of took a little bit of a churn once it went in, or I got
bounced off a rib or something.
Yeah, something. And I mean, that bull, it looked bad when you got up to it. I'm like, because the arrows, like the fletchings got hung up coming out of the hide, but it was right in the middle of the guts. I'm like, well, that doesn't look very good, but he's dead. And I made a good shot on him, but I'm like, that arrow had to do something funky when it went into that bull, because he died within a minute. I mean, easily inside of a minute. And so I cannot believe, I mean, that was the stupidest elk. I mean, we honked at him. We drove up on him. He had us pegged in the middle of the road. I mean, we gave him 3 more than obvious opportunities that we were hunters and with, bad intentions and he's hanging up on the wall, just can't believe that bull man let us get away with that much. But, the bro guys say, it only takes one. Well, I mean, that was the one that year. And I can't believe
that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I was getting anxious for you when you said that, like caught you in the road, because I've been caught in the road by some animals and it's never worked out for me. So
no,
good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah. And Brad ended up passing on that bull and then killed. He's a very good elk hunter. But fire season started screwing with us a little bit last year. He got a little antsy and shot a 4-point. I think I might have blacktail that score higher than his 4-point. I mean, it was the smallest 4-point I've ever seen for a Rosie. But and he's like, he sent me a picture. He's like, fuck. I was like, dude, you killed a bull in like a level 4. So you have very, very small places of land that you can even kill a bull on right now. And you managed to kill one. I'm like, that's incredible, and his wife was there with him and it was pretty cool.
Filled the freezer.
Yeah. I mean, he kills a bull every year. Pretty much every year. And I do too now, but I mean, he's definitely got some really big rosies over mine. And I think this year we might start passing on bulls. It takes everything I can not to throw an arrow down range at one when I get a shot, because it's pretty hard. I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. Rosies are I think rosies are tough. The toughest. I mean, out of Rockies versus rosies, I'd rather kill a Rosie any day. It's just, to me, it's a bigger accomplishment,
Yeah. For me, I'll take what I get. I think I've only pulled back on an elk. One time, and my buddy ruined it for me. I'll tell you this story. I may have already told it on the podcast. And if so, sorry to the listeners, but you don't know Garrett. So
it's all good. Yeah.
Hunting in, central northern Colorado. And, basically it was 2020 when there was a huge snowstorm, like 12 inches of snow. Basically we were locked up for a day in camp. But the next day we get out, we're glassing in the morning and we see this big old bull just sort of cruising right where we planned on hunting. So we're like, all right, well, let's just go follow his tracks. He'll bed down. We can just follow his tracks until we get to him. So one of my buddies got hurt. So he stays back at camp in that same glassing spot. Me and the other buddy go up and we spent hours following these tracks. He never sat down, but before we know it, all of a sudden there's another bull. We don't know it's another bull. We're just like, oh, there's a bull, huge bull. But it pins us. We really have no shot at it. It's probably about like 60 yards. So within range, but we can't move. Mm-hmm. We weren't prepared for him to get up on us. Either way, he spooks, runs. And my one buddy at this point is like, let's go after him. And I'm like, let's follow these tracks and see if that was the bull that we were originally chasing. And it wasn't. It was definitely a different bull. But I'm like, we're not going to catch him. Like, who knows where he went? We can follow his tracks until tomorrow, but we're not going to catch him. At the same time, our buddy who's just injured in glassing is like, there's a herd. I found a herd of elk and they're bedded on an open hillside. And he sent us a photo and we're like, oh shit. Okay. So I'm like, let's go to the herd. And my buddy's like, no, let's follow this one we busted. And I'm like, we've got elk staying put versus an elk that we have no idea. So I'm like, all right, we'll go over that next hillside, that next finger ridge. And if we don't see anything there, let's have lunch. And then if these guys are still there, we'll go back and get the other herd. So long story short, nothing happens. So we end up going back to that herd. And we hike down to, there's basically a saddle in between us and we can see him from this other hillside. And I'm like, all right, let's drop down to that saddle. I'll hike around the mountain and up the back. And if the wind is good, I'll come in from above them. You get up to the same elevation and then you push in that way if the wind is good. Mm-hmm. My buddy's like, all right, let's do it. So I'm like, don't start hiking until like you give me 20, 25 minutes to get a head start so I can get around him. So I get up, I get around, and it's like a nice warm day because it's September, right? So the snow's wet and quiet. Like you can do whatever you want in the woods. You're not going to make any noise. And I'm just sort of trekking on this ridge top and I see an antler. I'm like, ooh, I got it. Like, let's go. So I drop my pack. I drop everything. I go in with my bow and I've got timber probably to about 30 yards from the elk. And I'm just slowly moving through it. And all of a sudden I see another elk and another elk and another elk. And I realized that there's probably 15 to 30 here. Like, I'm not even really sure. But the bull that I see, raghorn, but I don't care. I just want to get a shot on him. And so I'm maybe 40, 45 yards, which at the time probably out of my range. Now I'd be very comfortable with it. But at the time I was like, I don't know. I'm going to try and get a few more yards. Mm-hmm. Thing is, his whole body was blocked by a log. So all I saw was his head. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just very slowly get another 10 yards. He'll eventually stand up. Next thing I know, all of these elk stand up, look the other direction, and then book it. Just run off the other way. And as it turns out, my buddy, when I was explaining the plan about making sure the wind's good, he didn't have a wind checker. So he was just like, he ran out of cover. And so he just started belly crawling. He had no cover. He didn't know what the wind was doing. And he just crawled in on really the only elk that I've ever gotten in on. So then as they were running, I went full draw. The whole herd was over here. I had a bull and I was like, I think that's 50 yards. So I put my 50-yard pin on him and fired. Shouldn't have done it. Mistake. Like, good thing that elk was probably more like 80 yards away because that arrow landed well short of that herd of elk. No elk were injured. Nothing was hurt but our pride. But that's the only time I've ever drawn back on anything, man.
That's crazy.
So like you were saying, it's hard to draw back. So it's hard to hear hunters like yourself say, maybe I'll start passing on some stuff. That gives the rest of us hope, saying that we can get better. We can get to that point because I'm not there.
I mean, it took me, and granted, I was trying to kill an elk the easy way, and there's just not really an easy way. It's trying to be lazy, when I was 16, 17, just learning how to do it. And then, I always had to have a friend drive me because my first pickup was a drum set. So I can't drive that anywhere. And I had to choose between a drum set and a pickup. So story behind that. Chose a drum set because the drum set was going to pay for the pickup because I was going to become a professional drummer. And that never
immediately
happened.
Too, right?
Yeah. So I always had a buddy with me or had to have somebody drive me up there so I could go hunt. And I think it took me 6 years to finally kill my first bull with a bow. And then every year since then, it's been pretty much not I'm not gonna say automatic because that just takes away from how hard it really is. But it's been once the first one falls, it's kind of like, okay, now they're going to start falling every year. It's just, that's
what I'm hoping for. Just got to get that first one.
It is. I mean, the first one's the hardest, I think, because you got so much nerves and pressure. You mean, where does all this pressure come from? Like, why do we put all this pressure on ourselves to make I don't know, just to make one really good shot and to kill a bull. And it just, all this pressure, I am so guilty of it. And I still do it to this day, but like I tell about month and a half to 2 months before September, like I get anxiety. I truly do get anxiety. And I get this like tightness and this bad feeling in my gut because that 6 years of failure, that is probably the biggest reason outside of my love for actually hunting elk. But the fear of failure drives me probably more than my successes do. And I never want to eat another elk tag in my life. I honestly believe I will eventually, it'll happen, but that fear of failure pushes me so hard to hunt so hard and to never have to experience that again. I hate it. I'm the type of guy that I hate winning more than I love. All right. I hate losing more than I love winning. I am that guy,
I am too.
It really does drive me. So, and I have a lot of motivation because I failed for so many years, and I say failed, but I didn't fail. I learned and I got better, but, I in my opinion, I failed. My job is a provider for me and my wife, and a hunter is to put meat in the freezer. And for elk, I didn't do that for many years. So,
I understand that. It's funny you mentioned this anxiety thing. I've never really had anxiety because it's just been a learning thing for me. But I did get hit with anxiety actually a week ago, based on last season, because I'd never felt more prepared to go into the elk woods, and then the season got torn away from me, and then I was just like, "What happened?" And I'm trying to spin that anxiety into like being even better this coming year. So we'll see, man. But there's a lot to it. Emotions all year round when it comes to, hunting, especially the Western big game, because you put so much into it, whether it's money or effort, time, all those different things.
100%. I mean, we spend so much time. Like I used to spend at least 5 days a week shooting my bow all year round. I mean, I was at the range 2 hours a day for, the most I've ever shot. I tracked my shots for like 2 months on an Excel spreadsheet. I was so deep into it. track my group sizes at every range from 0 to 80 or from 10 to 80. I would track my group sizes. I could tell you at what arrow my groups would start opening up because of fatigue. Like it was insane. I was shooting 200 arrows a day, I was 6 arrow group. I started off at 4 arrow groups, built some good stamina up, went to 6 arrow groups. And then pretty quick, you're shooting 200 arrows a day. And, all that time spending over training could have been spent time over, scouting and woodsmanship and being able to hit a chew can at 80 yards doesn't matter if you can't put an elk in front of you,
or you can't find them or whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah. In my case, I couldn't find them, but, it's just kind of funny, the things that we value or get hung up on because of whatever thing, like Cam Hanes, lift, run, shoot every day. Like everybody just wants to, jerk that guy off all day long. And it's just like, man, like I work out 3 to 5 days a week. I don't shoot my bow hardly at all anymore. And I shoot it. I haven't shot it since, well, it's probably been 2 months since I've shot my bow, and I'm not one of those guys that's going to take it out 2 weeks before season because I have a whole tuning process I go through and everything. So it has to start at least 2 months prior to season. But it doesn't take long to get really good with a compound bow, especially if you have a blueprint of a good shot process. And there's just a lot of things that a lot of people are doing. I'm like, man, if you spent all that time where you're training here and just put yourself in the woods and boots on the ground, you would find more success. You really would. And so that's been a tipping point in my success, is just focusing my efforts in the right spots. So,
yeah, that makes sense. You got to find the right place to put the effort. With me moving to Texas, I'm going to put my effort into e-scouting this year because I decided I'm going to try some new spots. So, yeah, but we're getting off topic, Garrett. This is maybe something for your podcast, not mine. All right, man. We're not supposed to talk about this shit. We're supposed to just tell stories. So I know you have a couple other ones for us. And I don't know, you said that was the second dumbest animal. Is the first dumbest animal an option for us, or do you just want to stick with
that? Was the dumbest elk I've ever killed. Where was I going at with the dumbest animal?
You said, second dumbest animal, but the dumbest elk. So if you got that one, great. If you can't recall, not a big deal. I know
no, that was the second dumbest story. My buddy Kevin, who I love to death, and it sounds like I'm talking shit about him, but I'm remembering him and the way that I felt in the moment. So yeah, I love my buddy Kevin to death. Him and I are like best friends, and we are best friends and lifelong friends at that. Well, Kevin's I have no idea how to even describe this guy other than he just does what he does, and you may never even know why. So except Kevin, he might know why. Half the time I don't even think he knows why he does things, but we all have a friend like that. We all have a friend like that. He served in the armed forces for a few years, came back, and wasn't exactly the same when he came back. I won't get into that, but he just was just a little bit different. And so it's been, he's married with kids now, and he's 100%, but there for a while, we're like, hey, we should definitely hang out with Kevin today and go on an adventure. Cause every time you hang out with this guy, it's an adventure. Well, we go up to this spot up the North Umpqua, and it's like towards the end of blacktail season. We're in the Cascades, and we're really high. I mean, we are way high, like above 4,000 feet for the Cascades. That's I know for a fact we're probably closer to 5,000 to 6,000 feet. And it's raining, and none of us checked the weather because we're in our early 20s. None of us prepared and brought food like we should have because we're in our early 20s and we weren't thinking. We brought 1 2-person tent for 3 dudes, and we we're completely unprepared for anything. And God forbid we shot a buck. And we're hiking in 2 miles into this basically wilderness, old burn. And we split off, and Mitch and I had this whole conversation about what should we do with Kevin. We can't really leave him by himself because he'll get lost. And I'm like, no, Kevin knows how to fucking follow a trail. He won't get lost. And Mitch is like, dude, he's going to get, basically. And so long story short, we're pretty close to 2 miles in, and it's not raining yet. The weather's coming. And I jump a nice 3x4 buck, and I shoot him. And I am the worst offhand shot shooting at a live animal that I know. I'm dog shit. I fall apart with a gun. Like I just get too excited. I punch the trigger and I missed one of the biggest bucks of my life up there on another trip. And, but I got this one and, I'm yelling at Mitch, I got one. You're going to like this one. It's a good buck. And so I call him down to me. I'm already working on the buck, got some pictures of him. And the buck's actually mounted upstairs and he's not huge, but the story behind this buck is why I mounted it. Well, I'm calling to Kevin, where are you at? We're yelling. He's the farthest one up on the hill. So it's Kevin, Mitch, and me. We're making a push through this burn. Well, Kevin's like, oh, did you kill one? I'm like, yeah, you heard me shoot like 4 times. Yeah, I got him. And I'm like, come on down. Like we'll all pack this thing out together. Well, Mitch comes down right away. You know, he's hunted his whole life too. And Kevin, not so much. And we're working on this buck and it's been, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, where the fuck is Kevin, dude? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, Kevin, where are you at? And he's like, I'm just sitting here. Why are you just sitting up there? Why aren't you coming down here? He's so far away. I can't even hear him. We're like yelling. He's got to be 200 yards up the mountain. And he's like, my feet hurt. I was like, okay, your feet hurt. I'm like, are you going to come help pack out this animal? And he's like, silence. I was like, okay, Kevin's probably not going to help pack out this animal, but it's just going to be me and you. And this is a big bodied buck. It's a high mountain buck. He's got a lot of fat on him. He's a big blacktail bodied buck. And I'm like, you're not going to have to pack this son of a bitch out of here. Like, this is not going to be fun. And it's starting to just piss and pour on us. It's just getting with it. The wind there was a giant front moving in, about 40-mile-an-hour winds. Now we got sideways rain. We're putting this freaking thing in our pack. And I hear boom. I'm like, oh, Kevin just shot one. Boom. I'm like, well, maybe he didn't. Boom. And Kevin's hunting with an AR because it's Kevin. Don't know why. He's just hunting with an AR. So Mitch looks at me and him and Kevin were like super close at this point. And they still are, but they were like, even me and Kevin were close, but they were closer. And, and he's like, God damn it. I'm like, what? He's like, Kevin's fucking lost, dude. That wasn't shooting at a deer. Kevin's gone. Kevin's lost. He's shooting 3 shots so we can come find him. And he's getting, I was like, there's no way Kevin got lost, dude. The trail's right there. Like, all you had to do was walk east. Like, that's it. Like, you can't not hit a trail. And then he's like, watch, no, there will be 3 more shots here, probably 5 or 10 fucking minutes. And we're going to have to go find Kevin. And I'm like, no. So I'm like, on the way out, we'll find him and we'll see what he shot, you know? And Mitch is just fucking pissed. And like, we're getting wet. Kevin's not helping. He's gone, probably lost. And then a few minutes goes by, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, okay, you're right. He's definitely lost. It's 3 more shots. I mean, it's way gone. It's so far past where he should be. We can barely hear the shots now. I'm like, he's kind of going in the right direction though, because that's towards the truck. But I'm like, if he's going in the right direction, why is he shooting warning shots, you know, or help find me shots? And so we get the buck in there, and we both have a lot of weight, and blacktails aren't big, but everything's wet, right? That adds weight. The buck is wet. It was way too heavy of a pack for both of us. And so we're hiking out, and the weather really starts to hit, and it changed from rain, 30-mile-an-hour winds ish to like definitely 40. I mean, and hail, and it was pelting you in the side of the face. So you couldn't just walk the trail. You kind of had to like walk with your head to your right shoulder so it wouldn't just smack you in the face. I felt like someone just was shooting you with like a 410 over and over again. Just it hurt. And so we finally make it out. It takes us a couple hours, and we finally make it out. We are soaking wet, no rain gear because we weren't prepared, no food because we weren't prepared. And we're like, the whole time, me and Mitch were like cheering each other. I'm like, dude, when we get back, I've got this can of food. We're going to eat the shit out of that can of food. It's going to taste so good. We're going down to the store. We're buying hot dogs. We're going to get some beer. It's going to be awesome. We're going to get warm in the truck. You know, the tent will be dry. We can at least change in the tent. And I'm like, oh yeah, like let's get back here. I want to eat. I'm hungry. I'm freaking starving, cold. Well, we get back. The tent's wide open. Kevin's in the truck in the passenger seat. And I'm like, okay. So Kevin found his way back. He's in the passenger seat of the truck, sitting there. But why is the tent wide open? It's fucking everything's wet, right? I mean, you can't have a wide open tent. Every sleeping bag, every pillow, the tent soaked. Great. I'm like, I told Mitch, I'm like, if he ate the food, I'm gonna fucking kill him. so I'm like, we walk up to the truck and Kevin's got the only can of like beans or something, and he's like looking at us like, oh, you guys get one? You know, it's just like eating the only food we had. And not only did he leave the tent open, he walked over everything with his muddy boots. He hates when I tell a story because it makes him sound like an asshole. But he walked over everything looking for the food, like this little can of whatever it was, and got cold. So he decided to go sit in the truck and just wait for us. And then and me and Mitch are like, I can't believe you did this, then this, then this, and then you fucked us by eating all the rest of the food. And he's like, I got hungry. And I was like, we're like an hour away from the store, like not probably an hour and a half away from the store, Kev. Like, obviously we're not going to starve to death. That's fucked up. So yeah, we drive down to the store, and then actually I've got it. Let me grab the picture right here. This is the picture of the of the buck. I mean, it's a good blacktail, not a huge one or anything. But
which one's Kevin?
That's Kevin.
I was gonna guess that one was Kevin.
Yeah. I told Mitch, I'm like, there's no fucking way he's gonna be a part of this. I was so mad. I was like, he doesn't even deserve to be a part of this picture. And then Mitch is just like, whatever, man, it's cool. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have him be a part of this picture so I can point to this moment when he pissed me off so bad and he fucked us. I'm like, I'm gonna point to that picture every time I get mad at Kevin. I'm like, remember this? And then I mounted that deer just so I could like, remember that, Kevin? Remember that hunt? Wasn't that fun? So
that's
like, I hate when you tell that story. You make me sound like an asshole. I'm like, no, Kevin, you're just Kevin.
You got to email me that photo so I can post it on the Instagram so people can actually
Kevin,
see it.
And we are all still like super best friends to this day. You can see how skinny I am in that photo, but yeah, I mean, that guy right there is the best offhand shot I know. He is absolutely incredible. He let one of the biggest bucks him and I have ever seen get away in that same exact spot I shot that blacktail, because I pulled up on it quick. He's like, Garrett's got this, like a 40-yard shot, and the deer's going bing, 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 you know, shoot right over it. And like, he's like, dude, I gave you that shot. I'm like, you shouldn't have. You know me. Like, I'm like, you fucked up. That's not even.
Yeah, that's your fault.
I'm mad at you for not shooting that deer. Like I said, let's lay out a ground rule right now. Anytime you and I are hunting together and we jump a buck, you automatically shoot it. Like, don't even worry about me. I will never get mad at you. But now if we have a buck out there at like 400 yards, yeah, I'll take the shot because I have time to get ready and dial. But I'm like, you were the designated offhand jump buck shooter. Like, you're it. Like, I don't care. So we haven't had that issue ever again. But yeah, so that story, man, that's actually one of the funnest memory. I mean, it wasn't fun at the time, but looking back on it, I wouldn't trade that memory for nothing. I mean,
yeah, man, it's funny how those stories all end up that way, right? Like the worst experiences you've had are your favorite stories, and they come up on this podcast often, which is great.
That was the worst blacktail pack out I will ever have. There will never be a worse pack out than that one. That was the worst. And it would have been a hell of a lot better with 3 people. I can tell you.
I bet, man. It reminded me of my hunting buddy. I don't know if he's quite the caliber of Kevin, but our first hunting trip, man, I was like, all right, I've got all dinners planned. I've got all lunches, breakfast. All you got to do is bring yourself like food to sustain yourself, you know, in the 13 miles that we're going to do during this day. Guy rolls in with like a Costco size box of candy bars, and that is it. Like, that is all the food he brought to survive a week of hunting elk. And I was like, all right, man. I don't know where we're going to go with this. But I have a buddy like that. I just haven't hunted with him enough to have him get lost too many times on me.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I asked him, like, why did you shoot your gun? He's like, I got lost. I was like, what do you mean you got lost? He's like, well, I got turned around and then I found the trail after I shot my shots. So I'm like, you didn't think about shooting 3 more shots once you got back to the truck, so we weren't out there looking for you? He's like, no, I didn't think about that. That would have been a good idea. I was like, yeah. How do you know we weren't just out there fucking wandering the woods for you? So it's just like, oh man. Yeah. Awesome guys. Great friends. But yeah, I mean, he still does funny shit like that every time we hang out. I mean, he's deep into conspiracy theories now. And so every couple times a month we'll get together and watch conspiracy movies together. And he shows me the
That's awesome.
and greatest. Yeah. It's awesome. But yeah.
That's perfect, Garrett. That's the exact kind of stuff. Like my personal favorite hunting stories are when is of a friend being an idiot. And so thank you. Like those are my personal favorite. I don't know what the audience likes or not, but I love them. But yeah, I know. I think I kind of pulled that out of the ether here. You had some other ones planned. You want to dive into those, or you want to wrap it up? It's entirely up to you. I'll go as long as you want.
I've got one that was really interesting. It's not really that funny. Brad Powell was kind of funny in it. I got the whole thing on video. So if you want to go on my Instagram, I think it's still on there. It's the story is called "What the Fuck Happened," I think. It's on. Is it on my Instagram? We'll see real quick. Yeah, it's WTF happened. What the fuck happened? And it's a story of my bull from 2 years ago. So me and Brad Powell are hunting together again. I took him out one of my spots that I used to hunt years ago. We just weren't getting into the elk 2 years ago where we were. Like we were the first like 5 or 7 days. It was phenomenal. And then it was just like a desert of elk, nothing. And so I'm like, let's go hit some new area. You know, we need to get out of this rut. And so we did. Right before dark, I find this nice 5-point. Actually, no, that's the bull from 2 years ago. The one I shot last year looks almost identical to that one. So
okay.
Now I'm talking about that bull. And nice little 5-point. And he's super pissed, super vocal, has a bunch of cows. I don't know, 15, 12 cows, something like that. And I mean, anytime you pop a twig, you fart, you cow call, he bugles back. He's pissed. He's raking. Tons of video of him on there doing that. And we just didn't have the daylight to where I thought it was like a slam dunk. I felt like this bull was a slam dunk, but it would have been right at the last being able to see your pins and make a good shot. And I'm like, let's just leave them for tomorrow and we'll come back in the morning. It's a Friday night. You know, no one else is up here and we'll come back tomorrow morning. Probably won't be anybody here tomorrow morning. Well, that was completely wrong. We got there at dark and we were waiting for daylight. I'm pretty sure, I think we can hear him bugling in the dark. And we're like, he's right, literally within 100 yards of where we left him and still in the unit with his cows. And so we come up with a game plan. I'm shooter and Brad's like, I'm just going to call him right in for you and keep him busy. And on this bull, we played it a little bit different where Brad was going to stay in the bottom of the creek, sound like a bull, keep him raking. This bull liked to rake. He would rake for a minute straight. I mean, just tear up a tree, move on to the next one. So I'm like, if you can get him raking again, I'm just going to walk up to that son of a bitch and shoot him. Done.
Yeah. Solid strategy.
Because when they're raking, they're not paying attention. And he was raking so hard that his nose was like almost to his chest, like he was all the way up, and then his eyes would go straight up into the sky. He'd rake the whole tree all the way up and down. Like the hardest raking bull I've seen for his size is just like, Jesus, getting it. And I'm like, that's a slam dunk. And all the cows magically, it was the perfect scenario. He was on this little kind of finger ridge. He was on one side, and then all of his cows were on the other. So I had one elk, not 15, I had to compete with. Well, the bull's ripping off bugles, this and that. Everything's perfect. I haul ass up the hill and I lose him. The bull kind of shuts up. I'm like, and I look back down at Brad and I kind of give him like the what's going on thing. Yeah. And he's like, give me the finger wag, get up the hill. So I haul ass up the hill and I hear a bugle. I'm like, son of a bitch, that bull went up to the top of the spine on the timber's edge. And then went to basically where the lead cow was. And now I hear another bugle and I'm like, well, that's not a bull. There's another dude trying to kill this bull and he's on the same ridge. He's about 250 yards above the bull, but he's on the same exact timber line. I'm like, great. Now we're not going to kill this bull because this guy's going to fuck us. He's above the elk in the morning. So doesn't have the thermals. And I'm like, we started on the bottom because of that. And this guy just wasn't thinking about thermals. And I'm like, it's just a matter of time until they all bust out of here. And finally I'm smelling elk. I can't see him yet, but I can hear him. I'm getting closer. He's staying put. He's not moving anymore. And that guy kept bugling every time that bull bugled. So I didn't have to have Brad do anything at this point. I walk about to the very top of the finger ridge, about 20 yards from the timber's edge. And I come around this reprod fir tree, and I look around it, and I'm staring at a cow about 10 yards right in the eyeballs. I'm like, shit. And then so I'm like, we're just staring at each other, and she's just not a very old cow. She's probably like a yearling. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of ever so slightly just go behind the tree, and I'm like, I'm just going to go over here instead. And then I'm looking at another elk, and I'm like, shit, like I am right in them now. So I've got a cow right here off to my left, about 10 yards. I've got a spike bull about 20 or 30 yards right here. And then the whole rest of the herd. And there's an old landing that bull is on with like 2 cows, and he's right there. And they're all looking at that guy bugling. He's out in the middle of the open, sitting on a stump, bugling at these elk. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, they're not going to come to you. And so what happened is that guy, if he had a little bit better game plan, he could have killed that bull. That guy, as soon as he bugled, that bull went on defense because he was already playing defense against us, but he had the higher ground. So there's no need for him to come to us. The other hunter was above him. So he had the high ground, and he had the cows between him and the bull. So that bull automatically went shoot and put himself in between that hunter and the cows, and wasn't going to leave. That bull was going to have to come down and lose the high ground. So sound like Star Wars here, lose the high ground. and that just wasn't going to happen. That bull wasn't leaving his cows.
Yeah.
So yeah, that bull's playing defense, and the whole herd's looking at him because he's out in the middle of the freaking open. And Brad at this time's flipping the guy off, waving at him, waving the bird at him, and just pissed because obviously we're trying to kill that bull. We were there first. We're in position. Everything's good for us. And Brad's just like giving him the what for, hoping the guy's looking at him through binos. The guy's not paying attention. And so I'm like, man, that bull's pretty far away. He's got to be 110 yards away, 120 yards away. So I range him 79 yards. I'm like, no ways he's 79 yards. 79, 81, 80, 79, just bouncing. It's pretty brushy, but he's right there at 80 yards. So I'm like, well, fuck, I'm going to shoot him right here. So dial to 80, draw back, just boom, and perfect. Just everything felt good. And I think I ranged the brush right in front of him because I thought I smoked him. He jumped up, kind of did the, oh crap thing, and then went down the hill and started circling down below me, but only ran about 60 yards and stopped right below me in a shooting lane. Range 60, 62, somewhere around there, a lot of brush. I'm like 60 yards, I'll range for that. It's downhill, so I won't have to pay a penalty for much being off very hard because it's steep downhill. And so I'm shooting like downhill 62 yards, 60 yards, and boom. Oh, and I forgot he's looking dead straight at me at this time too. So I have a 62-yard frontal. That's not preferable, but if you already have an animal and an elk, or
you got to take the shot.
And an arrow and an animal, free send for anything, right? Anything goes, in my opinion. So I'm like, I need to put another arrow in this bull because I don't know where I hit him. And long story short, I smoked him right here. About an inch low of where I was aiming, 2 inches low of where I was aiming, but it went boom, and then shot out the other side, just went all the way through him. Like, shit. And I'm like, definitely smoked him that time. And so now immediately he's not running. He's just trying to go, super lethargic. And at this point, that guy, I look back up there and now he's standing on the stump, just watching it all unfold. And the bull's skirting below me about 30 yards and I can't get a shot. And he's just kind of skirting along, kind of goes up onto that finger that's next to me. And he's 62 yards again. Shit, I don't have to dial for that. So I shoot or I draw back and I have it right on him. And he starts to pick up his foot and just kind of sets it back down. I'm like, oh, he's gonna take off here in a second. So I get going and I can see he's starting to take a step. So I put about a foot in front of him, and right, I'm like, just go off, just waiting for the hinge to go off at that point. I'm just trying to keep it right in front of his chest. And right when he starts taking a step, that bow goes off, and I smoked him right behind the heart. And I mean, I was aiming at least 6 or 8 inches in front of his chest there, and made a good shot on him. And I'm like, that is 100% a dead bull. Like, there's no doubt about it. It was dead after the first shot, in my opinion. But so I've got 3 arrows in this bull, and I'm like, hell yeah, good 5-point. But this time he takes off. He doesn't just walk or anything. He hauls ass straight down the bottom of the unit, runs across the main gravel road, and he's gone. I mean, he went 300 or 400 yards. I'm like, oh shit. Like, that's not good. If he had enough energy to make it there. And so Brad watched it happen. I'm calling him up. I'm like, I got him, and that guy is gone up above us. And so I call Brad up, and on the way up, he's like, dude, there's a ton of blood going right here. He's like, you must have smoked him. I'm like, I think I shot him 3 times. And he's like, what? I was like, that's the most expensive elk I've ever shot right there. Like, each arrow is like 40 or 50 bucks, and fully rigged. And I'm like, yeah, that's the most expensive elk I've ever shot. And didn't find any of the arrows. Every arrow was gone. And I have no idea where they went. They all went through the elk. And so we're like, dude, he ran like a long ways. I don't know where he went, but we give him like half an hour. We're talking about what happened. And he's like, I was flipping that guy off. I'm like, you didn't see his 12-year-old kid like right above him? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you flipped off a 12-year-old, dude. And he's like, oh, fuck. He's like, I hope he didn't see me. I'm like, I hope he didn't see you either, dude. So, well, now that guy that was up above us is waiting for us down on the gravel road where the bull was, like, crossed the road. There's another truck parked out. So now we got 2 trucks, 2 different groups of hunters down there on the road. And everybody's just kind of having a powwow, talking like you and I are, right where my bull just went. And I'm like, that's not cool, because I don't know if you guys are spooking them even farther. You have no idea what's going on here. And so I'm like, well, they yell at us, hey, we got blood down here. And I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. I appreciate it. And so we go down there. I'm like, there's no point in even tracking the blood from here. And basically, we go down there. I'm like, hey, what's going on, guys? I'm like, hey, you shot that bull, huh? I'm like, yeah. He's like, we were stalking in on that bull that was in the bottom. I'm like, what bull was in the bottom? He's like, dude, there was a ripper in the bottom. He's a big bull. And I look at Brad. I'm like, yeah, you are kind of a big bull, aren't you? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, that was you. And Brad's got some chuckles that'll just, oh man, best chuckles in the game. And he was just ripping off bugles, doing what Brad does. And that guy was trying to kill Brad as I was trying to kill that bull, as that other guy was trying to kill my bull. And there was and then we had another set of hunters about 1,000 yards away watching us off of another landing that were watching that bull. They watched it unfold. So there was 3 different
public
sets of
land
hunters
hunting
that were trying to kill that bull when I arrowed him. And so we're talking, and the guy from up top comes down below, and we're talking to him, and he didn't see Brad. And luckily he didn't see Brad. And he's a super cool dude. He's like, once I saw that you were in position, dude, I was like, I just watched what I just wanted to watch. I didn't want to screw you. And I'm like, I really appreciate that, because all you would have had to do is anything, and that situation would have been fucked. Stand up and clap or whatever. It wouldn't have mattered. He's like, yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure you smoked him on that first shot. I'm like, I felt like I did, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was, everything felt good. And then one dude's like, well, I followed his tracks a little bit down the road. His toes are kind of pointing together. So he's like, he's about to tip over. And I'm like, man, I've never heard of that. Like, I like the optimism, and I hope you're right. But the hooves pointing together, he's like, that's when they start feeling weird, and that's when they start getting ready to tip over. I'm like, I've never in my life heard that, but we'll go with it, and everybody was cool. I gave one dude a bugle, the 12-year-old and his dad. I gave them a bugle from the Bro Guys, a brand new one. And super cool dudes from, they were local, and everybody was pretty much local. And so everybody kind of goes their separate ways. We go back to the truck. We don't know how hit this bull is. I mean, I have an idea, but we don't know. So we give him 3 or was it an hour or 3 hours? We gave him plenty of time. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're making phone calls, and finally we come back down. I flag where he went into this. I mean, it's thick. If you watch the video, it's 5-yard visibility. And it's thick. I mean, it's like 12-year-old regrowth. I mean, it's reprod 100%. Everything, you got blackberries and shit in there. Everything's poking and prodding and pulling on you.
Hate that stuff.
It's not fun. I mean, I understand why the bull went down there. And I'm like, okay, so let's just track real slow. I'll ribbon off every piece of blood and we'll just go from there. Well, we make it about 80 yards in there. And I'm like, dude, I swear I smell my bull. Like, I smell him. I can smell that musty, bull flavor, I guess. And Brad's like, yeah, we gotta be getting close. And somewhere around that time, I'm like, let's just push in a little farther. And about that time we start hearing, like, what the hell was that? And it's like almost like it's not like a cub, like a bear cub whining to its mom kind of thing. And we start hearing some growls. We start hearing some just brush breaking. And I mean, this thing is less than 20 yards away. I mean, it is pissed. We hear like just this really heavy, aggressive breathing. And then it was just really, really intense. And I'm like, pretty sure we just walked up and a sow with cubs probably claiming my freaking elk. And like, this isn't good. So Brad's like, let's just push in a little farther. It's like,
of course, that's what buddies are for.
Yeah.
He's like, so, I'll stand right behind you. You go.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, it's not your bull. I don't know why you'd want to go farther in, but I'm like, I will video it. So I'm going to stand right here and just video you going up there. And so he gets up there like another 10 yards and he's like, I could almost see it. And then it charges him. And he sees a flash of fur and he's like, oh fuck, and runs back to me. And it happened so fast that I threw my camera down and I didn't even have time to draw my bow. It was on him like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. And he runs right back to me. I'm like, keep facing it. Just back up. Like, don't turn your back. Just keep backing up towards him. Stay big. Like, obviously this thing's pissed. And he's like, it wasn't black fur. It was brown. I'm like, it's fucking cougar. And he's like, I don't know, but it has to be a cougar. And it was a big cougar. He's like, I saw, it was like right there. And so we're like backing up and we're talking the whole time. I'm like, hey, we're backing up now. Okay, we're leaving. Okay, it's, and then we back up about 20 yards and we're sitting there and we can still hear it pissed off breathing and just growling and all sorts of things. And I'm like, that fucker is on my bull. I bet he's standing on my bull. And I'm like, I don't have a gun on me. Do you have a gun on me? No, I don't have a gun on me. Like, neither of us have a fucking gun, dude. Come on. And not a rifle, not a pistol, nothing. And so we talk about it and then we're kind of just yelling at it, talking shit to the cougar, just, being funny, I guess, just making light of the situation. I'm like, we should probably actually back out though. It's just a little sketchy. And so we back out and we're like, I mean, the bull ended up dying less than 110 yards from the road. I mean, it wasn't very far off the road. And I hear like a truck coming. I'm like, dude, I bet this guy has a gun. So I run to the road and wave him down. He's got a giant ass camper trailer going up the steep gravel road. So I felt bad stopping him, but he's like, what do you guys need? I'm like, do you have a gun? He's like, oh, I always got a gun. And I was like, yeah, I was like, hell yeah, dude. He pulls out this fucking hand cannon, 44 mag revolver. And I'm like, holy shit, that's a giant pistol. Like, I mean, it had to be that long. It was like a Dirty Harry pistol kind of thing.
Yeah.
And tell him the situation. And he gets excited. He's like, hell yeah, I want to shoot a cougar with my pistol. So he gets in there and he's going like this, just walking in there. I'm like, we got it ribboned off for you, dude. And like, we'll be right behind you. And so I'm filming it, and the guy's cool as shit. And he gets in there and I'm like, okay, here's where we got charged, like bluff charged. Like, he's right here if he's still here. He's like, all right. So he's kind of walking through the brush like this. He's kind of like a big redneck dude, just super cool. And he gets up there and about 10 yards from where Brad stopped, he's like, well, I don't see a cougar, but I see your bull. And I'm like, you found my bull? And he's like, yeah, it's right here. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, and he's like, but there's no cougar. And so we get in there and that cougar had to be like literally right where it was right on my bull. It was standing on that bull. And so that guy's like, you want me to hang out with you for like a few minutes, while you guys start working on this bull in case he comes back? I'm like, I'm happy to have you, for just a few minutes. And when we went back out to the road, Brad also grabbed my machete. So we were
better than
machete, nothing. And then so the guy's like, you know what? I'm gonna take my truck and my trailer. I'm gonna go park it. I'm gonna bring some buddies back. We'll help you pack it out. I was like, that's totally unnecessary, but I appreciate it. Thank you. So he does, and right as we're about finished, just quartering it out, gutless method and everything. I hear some stomping coming through the brush, and I see some buddies of mine that have a YouTube channel, and it's Music in the Mountain, Brian and Tanya Thrall, amazing people. They were actually going in the same elk camp this guy was. So one of their hunting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they're like, we thought it was, and to make the full story come full circle, they're the ones that were watching me 1,000 yards away when I shot my bull. And they had a whole conversation because my buddy Brad always wears a beanie. Doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees, doesn't matter. He's always in a beanie. And so when they saw him through the spot and scope, like, that guy's got a beanie on. He's like, I wonder if that's Brad and Garrett. He's like, who else wears a fucking beanie out here? That's Brad for sure. Like, that is Brad. So as soon as that guy went back, he's like, yeah, these two guys killed this bull. Cougar charged him, and guy's wearing a beanie. He's like, oh, we got to go help him. So they showed up with a couple pounders, and we had a big laugh, a big drink. And then we all just, I think I packed out the head. That's it. Like,
that's awesome.
They wouldn't let me pack out my own bull. They wanted to help and brought us a beer, and I have a pistol now. I bought one. But yeah, my wife is like, immediately go buy a pistol. You need one immediately.
Yeah.
And so, but that was the most sketchiest elk hunting story I've had. I think that I can remember anyways. But yeah, so always carry in the woods, kids. That's what I can say.
That's one of the sketchiest, and then with the happiest endings of a story I've ever heard, Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, it was
odds.
The whole thing is on Instagram, on my story. So you can't see anything really, but you can see like how freaked out Brad and I were, and you can kind of see the guy going in there with a 44 mag, and it's just the whole thing is pretty intense, but it's a story I'll never forget, man. That was just 2 years ago. So the last two bulls had some interesting things go on. And when I got up to the bull, I immediately start doing autopsies on the bull. Like, where did my arrows hit? Did they go through? And immediately I see an arrow about 2 inches behind the heart. So when you hit a heart, I don't aim for the heart. That just means I shot low, 3 or 4 or 5 inches. You try to aim for the middle or upper third, is what I do. So I shot a little low and a little, about 2 inches behind the heart, which for a moving target, it's 62 yards, something like that.
That was your third shot, right?
That was my third shot. The second shot hit it exactly where I thought I did, is right here, but it was about 2 inches low. So those two shots at 60 to 62 were both 2 inches low. I think I dialed for 60, if I remember right. So the math completely adds up there. It was just brushy, and the rangefinder wasn't picking it up very good. The first shot I missed.
Really?
Yeah. There was only 2 holes in that bull, and I knew I shot him. The shot felt perfect. And the only thing I could think of is that the brush was so thick. I was picking up the brush, 5 yards in front of the bull or something. But the way that he reacted, I might've my fletchings might've slapped his chest or something, because he acted like he was hit. And when he only went like 60 yards, I'm like, he has to be hit, like he left his cows, he went downhill, he's looking back up at me, and like, I made the right call. If I would have known he wasn't hit, I wouldn't have shot, obviously, but I shot that bull twice, and both of them were pass-throughs. I hot dog styled through that bull at 62 yards. It was just a laser. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hindsight's 2020, but I'm glad the bull went down. And
he went down.
Great story.
Yeah. He didn't go down quick. With my arrows almost crisscrossed in that bull, because they both hit about the same height. And I'm just like, how did he make it that far? He had a arrow go all the way through him, got all the goodies, The second shot was a little low, but I mean, it caused some serious damage. I'm like, that bull was freaking tough. I mean,
they're monsters, man. They are.
Yeah.
And he was probably fired up, maybe a little bit of adrenaline from the bull below him, the bull above him.
Yeah.
He was ready to fight, right? So he was probably just ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, you can never underestimate, you know, an animal's will to live, and especially a bull like that. It's just crazy. I mean, I can't believe he made it that far. I never would have thought he would have made it at 100 yards, but he ended up going close to 500 yards.
Wow.
So, which is, yeah, and bled the whole way. I mean, he was bleeding good the whole way. So it's just like insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to try my best to get that story specifically put on the podcast, like show notes, so people can check that out. I don't know how to do that, so I'll have to see if it's even possible. if not, people can just go to your Instagram, which I'll also put in the show notes, man. But Garrett, man, this was fun. You had some awesome stories. I think we've been going. I've taken up more of your time than I think I asked for. So why don't we go ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and wrap this thing up, man? Why don't we tell the people where they can find you, a little bit more about your podcast, your Instagram, whatever else you want to share, and then we'll
if you just type my name, 2 R's, 2 T's, Garrett Weaver on YouTube, I'll pull right up, and On Point with Garrett Weaver, available on any podcast audio thing. I mean, from Pandora, Spotify to iTunes. I'm everywhere, and that's the same as my Instagram handle too, is On Point with Garrett Weaver. Super original, but it is, it's fun. We're going to start uploading again here soon, and actually just uploaded yesterday, and try and start getting some more information out, and hopefully help people, along their journeys, and try and find some successes too.
Man. Well, thanks again. I really do appreciate it. Your stories are top notch. I wouldn't expect anything different. Like I told you when I heard you on Western Contours, I was like, I have a feeling. I won't tell you why. I won't tell the listeners why I specifically reached out. I was like, I have a feeling this guy's a good storyteller. So Garrett, you killed him. Thank you.
You're the second person to call me after that podcast aired, because they were like, yeah, you didn't disappoint there, did you? I was like, yeah, my mouth never does, man.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to go listen to that one. It's a long one. It's like 3.5 hours.
Dude,
guys talking to everybody, but it's a good episode. So,
well, I appreciate
Garrett,
it,
man.
Thanks for having me on, man. I really do appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad that you were here to share, and I have a feeling we'll stay in touch and hopefully get you back on in the future for some more stories. Maybe we get Kevin on someday.
Right on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.